Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
And welcome. It is the Investor Coaching Show. I hope all of you are well and out there spending on Small Business Saturday or whatever they call it. I think that's what they call it, right, guys? Small Business Saturday. You're supposed to spend at some small business? Yes. Okay, I'll just make sure I get this right.
Maybe?
I think so. I think that's it. And then yesterday you were supposed to be spending at the big box stores and hope you had something left over.
Oh,
yeah,
we did.
Did you go out and spend?
I
get me a present?
For
you got
all
me
of
something. You got me
my
something for
friends
Christmas,
that
didn't you?
gave me so much love throughout the year. Because you know, Paul.
Who? What? Who gave you so much love throughout the year?
Like you.
Oh, there you go.
I'm not trying to kiss your whoop. But it is what it is.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Yes,
right.
we did. We gave back on Thanksgiving Day.
All right. So that's I trust that you had a lovely
And we gave back on my birthday.
And your birthday. It's true. You had a lot of stuff going on, man.
Mm-hmm.
You had a big week. All right. And Nick has been out there,
What Nick
having a big
do?
time, traveling all over the place.
Yeah.
He's a traveling man.
What he do?
He's been up in Indiana. He's getting to St. Louis. He's going to be
St. Louis. Hey, that's where I'm from.
Nice.
Well, there you go. He's making it big.
I'm moving around.
He's moving on up. Moving on up.
Good for you,
as
brother.
they say in the old song. Okay, so let's see. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful time. And it was fun. I have a couple things that I'm going to share today that I think are going to be really fun because you get these people have these hang-ups over Thanksgiving. They go and they hang out with family and the strife that sometimes family can bring. It seems like everybody has that kind of story. Those people in their family, they're like going, "Oh my goodness, shaking my SMH, man, shaking my head." And I have a really good time when I go because it's just like I enjoy it. I really do. And I had this one nephew I was talking to. And he comes up with some stuff. I'm telling you, this guy sits around and he watches YouTube videos and has some really good things that he gets his head into. Really interesting things. So I'm going to share something he shared with me. And I'm going to share some excerpts of something because it was fascinating and it does have something to do with finances. I'll twist it so it has something to do with finances because it's interesting and I think I want to share it with you. And he and I got into conversations about just the stuff going on in the world. It was fascinating, the ebb and flow of the world and what's happening, what people are worried about. And I'm always interested in what people are worried about, what fears that they have, the things that are kind of keeping them up at night.
How old is he?
How old is he? Oh gosh, David, I guess he's in his 40s.
Okay.
I think, yeah. That's really embarrassing. I should know. Even better, I should know his exact age, but I just. But anyway, so I was watching this one video, and it made me think an awful lot about some of the speeches that I've given over recent years. In all seriousness. And I'll get into some investing, financials type of stuff, but this was just a life type of video. And it reminded me of so many things that I have talked about over the years that I thought I'd start the show just talking a little bit about just the subject matter that they were getting into. And it was basically this on YouTube. It was this, oh gosh, I can't even remember the name of the video. I should remember the name of the video. That's really pathetic. But it was a video on, it was like Life in 15 Minutes or something like that. I think it was something like that, to that extent. It was, getting life figured out. And, I think it's an oversell, to try to say I can get life figured out in 15 minutes. But I think that some of the things in here were really, really good. We talk about investing all the time here, financial planning. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to improve our lives, right? We're trying to get to some place where we can do the things that we really want to do instead of spending so much time on things maybe we don't want to do. Now, work is a part of life. That's how we earn an income. And hopefully a part of all you earn, you get to keep. Is the idea is with investing, you put some aside, you live on less than what you make right now. And then at some point in the future, you actually have something set aside that you can live when you may not be able to you may not be able to work. You may not want to work. You may have other things that are priorities that you want to accomplish. You may want to do some things that have been just lifelong dreams. For some people, that's a big deal. But they're making the point that life was easy. And it says, if you think about it, if you read books on wellness, you could read a book and it'll be 300, 400 pages, however many pages. But it's basically going to say the same thing. It's going to be eat less, move more, right? And that's, I often use that example, as a matter of fact, when I talked about investing. Investing is really simple, right? Buy low, sell high. Yeah, super, super simple. But how do you do that? And so often what we do is we end up buying high. We buy after something has done well. We buy based on past performance. We assume that somebody had some kind of a skill. That's why their returns were good in the past. We ask our friends, hey, how do you like your advisor? Oh, my advisor's great. I've done great. And you don't know whether you've done well because the portfolio was well managed or whether the person got lucky because you don't even know anything about it because you're just blindly trusting, or they are blindly trusting. And that's typically what happens. Mutual fund companies, you couldn't give away a target date fund back in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. You couldn't give them away. Nobody wanted them. And, you found that there was very, very little investing in target date funds. Not because they hadn't been around for a long time. They had been around for a long time. But nobody wanted them. Why? Because the returns were awful. Why were they awful? Because they were mainly focused on big companies, big U.S. companies who had been basically gone through a dead decade. Negative returns up to 2012, negative returns. So who wanted that? Now you look at it, it's something like 80% of the marketplace, target date funds. Why the change? Well, because in most recent years, that is the area that has done fairly well. Not even the best, but it's done pretty well. And people think, hey, this is pretty good. This is great. Effortless investing. Don't have to think about it. Anyway, it's easy. Wellness, eat less, move more. Investing, buy low, sell high. Relationships, that's not hard either. Just make sure you listen to each other. People want to be heard. They want to be seen. They want you to know what they stand for, what's important to them. That's pretty easy. It's hard to do because we want to be heard too. So we talk over them, right? Everybody's guilty of this. You point your finger at somebody, you got 3 pointing back at you, right? Care. Just give a rip about people. Care about them. Love on them. So I always tell my staff, just don't even think about yourself. Just love on people. Everything else will be just fine. Just absolutely just love on people. Take care of them. And take care of them like your mom and dad, and hopefully you liked your mom and dad. You do that. And the success, success is work consistently on something that is valuable. Solve a problem. The bigger problem that you solve, the bigger economic problem that you solve, the better. If we look at how we make life, though, we like to make it complex. We like to make it really, really hard. And why? Why is it that we do that? And why is that we make it hard? Because people will remain confused if it's hard, right? And I remember this guy that I worked with, and he would make financial planning really hard. He was saying, you need to set up a limited partnership in oil and gas limited partnerships. And then what you need to do is, make sure that when you set up this oil and gas limited partnership, you're going to get tax credits on this thing. And you want to get tax credit, real estate. You want to get that. And you're going to have money coming out of this investment. And it's going to be paying premium. Is it real estate investment trust? And then you're going to take the premium from that. And you're going to buy a variable universal life policy with that, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And then you're going to take the tax credit, it's going to offset it, it's going to save tax. And he would have this unbelievably complex financial plan. And by the time you finished listening to him, your head was spinning. And he goes, great, that's what I want your clients to be looking like. And we'd be like, what? And he says, I want your clients so confused that they are putty in your hands. And I was like, this guy's a crook. And he didn't last long. Well, he did. He lasted a lot longer than he should have in the financial industry. I need to take that back. But, the reality was that he was just trying to confuse people. And that's the same thing we do with life. Make it so stinking complex that you have to read 18 million books to try to figure it out, right? And why is it that we make it so hard? It's because if it's simple, you don't feel special. It's only when you have overcome a big obstacle you feel special. You feel good about yourself. And if it's easy, anybody can do it. And that's the thing. And you think about it, and the other thing we try to do in life, we try too hard. Yeah, I dare you to try hard to sleep. It ain't going to happen, right? You're going to be up all night if you're trying hard to sleep. Try hard to make somebody love you. Yeah, good luck with that. And, if you're trying to float in the water, the more effort, the more likely you are to sink. I remember taking a life-saving class. I was scared of the water. I hated water. When I was a kid, I did not like water. And a friend of mine says, hey, Paul, you want to take a lifeguarding course? And I looked at Matt, my friend Matt. I said, Matt, I'm scared to death of water, so yes. I was like, whatever you're scared of, just face it. That was it. That was something that I don't know where I learned that. But I learned that if you spend a lot of energy and effort trying to stay afloat in the water, you're going to sink. And, what happens is, think about with effort and love and all that kind of stuff, right? You think about what happens with needy people. They drive people away. Needy people make people go, ugh, I got to get out of here. If you ever played a musical instrument, think about what you're doing when you play next time. You really think hard about the next lick that you're getting ready to play. And guess what? You're probably going to screw it up. Because it should be effortless, but that's not how we do life, right? Now, and we want to have effort without attachment. We want to do that. We want to put forth effort on whatever we're doing without attachment as far as how things are going to turn out, how the chips are going to fall. I always say that I walk through life, just open doors. Whatever doors open, that's how I have done things. If a door opens, I walk through it. I don't really think about it a whole lot. And you don't want to get too focused on the outcome. It's the process. When you talk about people that are going through struggle and strife, it's usually because they're so worried about the outcome. What am I going to do? What's the future going to bring? And I tell them, just live in day-tight compartments. Just think about what's happening right in front of you. And, another thing is, you control what you can. You can control your actions. You can control your reactions, but you can't control other people. Have you ever driven through Nashville traffic and you get really angry and you go, well, can I really control the traffic? No, I can control my response though. And it's just like life. And I was thinking about, just the brain and just how our brains work and how our minds work and the importance of sleep. And this guy was talking a little bit about this a little bit more in detail. I thought it was interesting. He was talking about cerebral spinal fluid and how it cleans the brain and how in the morning you think a lot more clearly. It happens in the middle, when you're sleeping at night. I did not know this, that your brain actually shrinks during sleep. The cells contract and it allows the fluid to go through the brain and it cleans things. As he likened it to a dishwasher, and I thought, wow, that's crazy cool. Just think about that. Having that, and why is it so important that we sleep? And so often what we do is we get so anxious and nervous about life, thinking about what's going to happen next, where are things, and trying to get anxious over things that we have no control over. And then what happens? We don't sleep. And then what happens? We wake up foggy mind, and a lot of the things that we can't control get to us. So the idea is that you just can't chase happiness. You know, if you try to chase it, it's going to be running away from you. It's kind of like a cat. Try to get a cat to jump in your lap if you like cats.
Not
that
a
is.
cat.
If you like cats, if you like them, you might want them to jump in your lap. But if you try to get them to do that, forget it. I got a couple cats. I could just tell you firsthand, they do not want to jump. You know, it's just like my son just sits there, and boom, the cat. It's almost like the cat knows that, you know, I don't know. He's not even trying, and the cat jumps in his lap. It's just the way it works. I remember, you know, Psycho-Cybernetics, a book that I read years ago, and it was talking about this guy was he was a plastic surgeon, and he was just talking about people that actually had plastic surgery, and they would look in the mirror afterward, and they didn't see any difference. And it was the idea being that we are like thermostats. If it gets too hot in the room, you know, you turn on the air conditioning. If it gets too cold, you turn on the heat. And we have this level that we're comfortable with. And that's exactly what we find with lottery winners. People that, you know, do really well. Let's say if you have a child and they inherit a bunch of money and they aren't used to handling money. That's a lot of times why, you know, why it's often a good idea for kids to have some kind of a clue what you've got going on financially, just to get them at least to the point where they know a little bit. And there was an interesting article in, I think it was the Wall Street Journal or one of the financial publications, talking about the very, very wealthy having meetings with their kids and giving them some kind of an idea of what was going on and the trusts and things like that they had set up. Because a lot of times they end up inheriting a lot of financial wealth, and they don't know what to do with it. And they're not used to having money, so they blow it on things. It's kind of like the lottery winner that ends up back where they started just a few years later. You know, so it's but there's a lot more. I'm gonna spend some more time on this right after this break, because I want to talk a little bit about the things that we want to focus on. Is it
because of no partnership within the relationship of being a parent?
Well, a lot of parents don't want to spoil their kids, and a lot of times they will have this no-talk rule, as we call it. And the idea being that of talking about money, talking about finances, it's impolite. You know, and it feels like bragging.
Okay.
You know, so maybe we're raised not to boast.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay.
And so hence we don't talk about it. You know, maybe we're worried about stymieing the motivation of our kids. You know, the idea being that, you know, if they see that we have all of these finances, maybe they won't work so hard because they're just going to rest on their laurels. But, you know, the reality of it is people may be living, you know, you take a person in their 60s, a couple in their 60s, the odds of one of the two of them at least being still alive in their 90s is really high, incredibly high. Yeah, I don't remember the statistics, Leviticus, but it is incredibly high that one of the two will still be around. So you may have kids that are in retirement, you know, for 10 years before you pass away. Might be, and if they haven't saved, they haven't done anything, it could be a long wait for them. So teach them about money now. Let them understand it. But a lot of times parents just don't feel very well versed to do that. In fact,
No, they don't.
There was an interesting little article I got on that too. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of stuff I'm going to cover today. I'm going to get to more of this right after this. I'm going to take a quick break and be right back. Hey, just a note to you podcast folks. We just came out with a retirement income guide, and I'm super excited about this. There are all kinds of myths about taking income in retirement. People worry about running out of money, and rightfully so, because a lot of these myths can actually cause that. Now, the myths that you typically hear about, number one, dividends, living off dividends in retirement, real estate, life insurance as a retirement investment, and annuities, and interest-bearing accounts, and target date funds. There are all kinds of things out there. What I want to do is put something together that walks through why those things are problematic, number one. Number two, the other thing that I wanted to do is walk through the evidence-based research on taking income in retirement. And we got a ton of data going all the way back to 1900. what's the logic behind it? And it's intensely logical. So we put that together, and all you have to do to download that, making it super simple, just go to paulwinkler.com/relax, and you can actually get into that very easily right there. So I would urge you to do that. Check it out, because I think you're going to really like it. paulwinkler.com/relax. Your Thanksgiving was anything like mine. It was conversations, interesting conversations. I always get into some fun conversations with family members and just talking about life and things that are going on. You know, getting close to the end of the year, and you start to think, okay, what did I do this year? How did the year go? How did I want it to go? How did it go comparatively? And just thinking about life, because a lot of times I have family members that are just like, Paul, what do you think about this, that, and the other thing? And we got into a conversation a little bit about just kind of philosophy, life philosophy type things. We were talking about life is easy, and I was and I'd actually run into a video that was very much a lot of the stuff that I typically teach when I'm up speaking in front of groups or universities, colleges. I'll talk about these types of things. But they were talking about, meaning and growth and contribution as being the things that we want to focus on in life. And that is something that I strongly agree with. Happiness tends to show up when we focus on those things. And, and biases. The thing that we often find are that our biases tend to drive our behavior a lot more than we think that they do. We look for things to confirm what we believe. Confirmation bias. The idea being that if I believe something, it tells me that, and normally if I want to take an action on something, there's something that I want to do, I will look for things that confirm my beliefs so that it will justify my action. It'll rationalize what I'm thinking about doing. Halo effect is another thing that drives our behavior an awful lot of the time. And, it's how we make decisions quite often is driven not only by what we believe and we want to find things that confirm it, but we also find that we have this idea of halo effect. We give people credibility that maybe they don't deserve. Maybe a pretty person is equated with being smart, for example. That'd be an example of that. Loss aversion with investing. This is huge. So often financial firms will push the idea that this thing is safe, this thing is protected, this thing is guaranteed. And the reality is guaranteed against what? Against loss. And what are they saying is the opposite of that is investing in maybe something that seems to be very, very risky, stock market based, for example. And they'll say, well, that's really risky. You don't want to do that. Stock market's really, really risky, so put all your money over here. Well, what do they mean by the stock market's risky? Well, you could lose your money there. Well, if I'm diversified amongst tens of thousands of companies, for me to lose all my money there would mean that simultaneously tens of thousands of companies would have to go bankrupt with no residual value. And that would mean that all their earnings went away. And that would mean that the companies became their real estate, their property, their intellectual property, their businesses became worthless. Well, if any of those things happen that caused me to lose everything, if that were to happen, how good would any insurance company, bank, or anything else that guarantees your money be? How safe would that be? Are you telling me that they would not be affected by that? But loss aversion can really drive behavior, and investment advisors use this to try to sell products. And the idea behind loss aversion, if you've just never really thought about it a whole lot, there have been studies where they say, well, if you could win $100 versus what would happen, what kind of actions would you take to win $100? Maybe not win, maybe get $100. Maybe I'll put it that way. Versus what actions would you take to avoid losing $100? And they find that people are much more motivated to avoid loss of $100 than they are to gain $100. So that's the idea behind loss aversion. They know that in selling products because you're more likely to sign in the dotted line if you think that you can protect yourself. But as I've said so many times in the show, a lot of these products that are supposed to be safe. They're supposed to protect your downside. People actually lose money. There's a big lawsuit right now. Matter of fact, right now, who was it? My wife was telling me about it. There was a famous, NASCAR driver. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Leviticus? Yeah, annuities. I know I can say this because I remember the company well because I actually worked with them years ago, Pacific Life. They had an annuity product.
No way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They used to do their life insurance back when, and I was in my deep dark days when I was in that business, as I call it. Yeah. And apparently that's what's going on right now. Lost a lot of money in this complex product. And they're sold, these products are sold so often on the idea that you can't lose money, that they're protected and all of that. And no, it was not the case at all. Now, there's also the 90-10 effect. And the idea is that we are driven by emotion. So a lot of times why these products are so easy to sell to people is because they buy an emotion and they justify with logic. That's the whole narrative from sales. You got to sell an emotion. Sell fear, use fear, greed, loyalty, trust. Those things are emotion-driven decision tools, and then justify with logic. And what happens, we rationalize things in our mind, and, our rational part of our mind just narrates the trip. It's all it's really there doing. It's not really driving the bus. It's an interesting study about how the emotional part of the brain, and I don't know how the heck they did this study. You just got to wonder. But it processes things like 500,000 times faster than the rational mind. And you go, how on earth do you do a study like that to figure that number out? I don't know. I have no clue, but I just think it's an interesting. I'm always fascinated by how the brain works. And then memory, how memory works is another thing that's just fascinating. Our memory, we think that we remember things accurately, the things that have happened to us as kids. But our memory, I remember when I was in the master's program, psychology, and we got into talking about memory and how when you recall a memory, you actually change it. It's kind of like Wikipedia. Where, if anybody can get on Wikipedia and can change the page, right? They can change what's written on there. It's the same thing. When you recall a memory, you're not remembering the memory. You're remembering things based on the last time you remembered the memory. It's just wild how the brain works.
Don't tell me that you made up Wikipedia too.
This is an analogy. It's a metaphor that's used. It is used to talk about memory and how it works. Then you have the 80-20 principles.
I know that. Well, when you brought up Wikipedia, I'm like, please don't tell me that you were a part of that.
Well, so Wikipedia is just the analogy. And yes, and I know where you're going with this, but that's not where I'm going. That's not where I'm going. So and a lot of you have heard the 80-20 principles, Pareto principles. Like 20% of what you do gives us 80% of your results. Yeah, I thought this was fascinating. That 20% of your clothes are what you wear 80% of the time. You just think about this stuff.
Yes.
Is that true for you too, man? I know it is for me. I look through my closet and I have certain things I haven't worn and I can't even tell you how long. That's the whole idea behind minimalism.
You see my fashions.
Ditch the stuff you don't wear.
No, well, you see my fashions.
Well, you actually dress way better than me, so let's just forget about that.
No way.
No, look, I'm wearing a sweatshirt today.
You're an artist. I'm not.
Yeah, not quite. 20% of our effort gives us 80% of our outcome. 20% of people do 80% of the work. We've heard that before. There's I was looking up on Perplexity, and I was just looking at what percentage of people pay 80% of the taxes, and it's 10 to 20% of people pay 80% of the taxes. Top 5% pay about 61 to 62% of taxes. Top 1% pay 40%. So it's a principle that stands in life. We see that. So what do we want to do? Focus on the stuff that really gives you results, things that are really important to you. What is really important to you? What are I was talking to a young guy the other day, and I said to him, I said, what are your goals? What are the things that are really, really important to you? And he listed out several different things that were really important to him. And one of the things is really, literally has a month to get it done. And I said, can you put everything else that's important to you on the back burner and really totally focus on this one thing that's really important? Because everything you're telling me, this is what's floating your boat right now. This is the most important thing going on in your life. And it was almost like he had never thought about that. And that's so often the case. We spend our time, waste our time looking at things we probably shouldn't be looking at, doing things, reading, watching things that we probably shouldn't, waste our time on. And most of what we do is waste. And we don't want to major in the minors. Relationships, we want to focus on the good ones. Who do we have around us that really lifts us up? Who do we have around us we want to spend more time with? And that's what we want to do. Whatever habits that we want to cultivate, like exercise. Because habits are easy. You got cue, the routine, and we got reward. And the idea is, what the cue might be is I'm bored. Well, what's the routine? Well, maybe check my social media. And then what's the reward? Dopamine, temporary hit. What's another cue we get? Stress. So what do we do when we're stressed? Eat junk food. And then what's the reward? Temporary comfort. Maybe if I'm bored, call a friend, work on a project, jump into a hobby. And, I can get the same dopamine. I can get the same feeling I can get a feeling of accomplishment, which might be a little bit better. But, this is just the easy stuff. And that's what I like about this thought process, that life should be easy. Go in bite-sized pieces. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Get 1% better daily. If you do that, if you just get 1% better, just a little bit better each day, after a year, you're 37 times better than you were at the beginning of the year. Just a little. And why is it that we have a hard time with this? And I think it really comes down that we tend to overestimate what we can do in one day, and we tend to underestimate what we can get done in a year. We don't think about the fact that if we just do a little bit each day, that in a year, a huge amount will have been done. If you just read 10 pages a day, for example, of a book, by the end of the year, you've read 12 books on average. You save $5 a day. Let's put this in financial terms. You save $5 a day. At the end of the year, you saved $1,825. You go and do a couple push-ups a day, and before long, you're up to 40, 50, 60 push-ups. I mean, you can do maybe you don't want to do it every single day. Just take a rest in between days. But the idea is just starting with a little bit. And, and life isn't about finding yourself. That's, so often people, that's what I'm trying to find myself. It's about creating who you're going to be. And that's the idea. I think that's the key. Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. If you want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors, and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.